Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Sad Times. I like to sit real close to this microphone and make my voice as melodious as possible. And I'm hoping that WLS calls me and gives me a show on the radio. This is Sad Times. My name is Kevin. I'm your host. For those of you who have never listened to Sad Times before, this is a show in which we bring on a guest every week who tells stories about when they were sad, upset, angry, or certain situations or life challenges they went through, traumas, to share their story so that you at home or washing the dishes or doing whatever it is that you're doing right now are able to maybe hear a story and say, you know what? I thought I was the only one who felt that way. The hope here is to help people feel less alone and feel more comfortable in sharing some of the challenges and traumas that they've gone through. Before we get to our wonderful guest, let's start with our two sponsors today. We have two sponsors today. Brent has been working extra hard. Thank you, Brent, for nothing. All right. Sponsor number one is the overly enthusiastic clapping of game show contestants who also seem to have no control over the size of their eyes. You know when you wake up and just can't summon the energy? Well, look no further than the game show contestant who appears to have the strength of 10,000 suns, and that's just in response to an innocuous question about sperm whales. That's a good sponsor, Brent. Thank you. And our second sponsor is Societal Norms. Do you ever wonder what those cloying existential pangs are at the back of your mind when you're looking to make a pretty much, well, any decision, be it large or small? Those are us. And they are about as real as Teddy Ruxpin. We have been fucking each and every one of you since there's been a society. You're welcome. That's more like Brent. All right. All right. Well, we got the sponsors out of the way. As always, we thank the sponsors. Hopefully, hey, everybody, visit our sponsors. They give us so much, and we hope that, you know, use the code FAKE. That's FAKE. Please use that code when visiting the websites I didn't read. Okay. Let's get to the guest. Look at her. She's sitting in studio across from me, my friend, Marina. Marina, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good. Excited to have you. So let's talk about how we know each other. You and I both went to a prestigious university in Southern Illinois. We won't name it. And you were a freshman when I was a senior?
Yes, this is correct.
And we were both theater majors?
We were, yes.
Go ahead.
I didn't initially start as a theater major and then moved into psychology as well.
Oh.
I know. But there was a brief time where I was purely in the theater world, and those were the best parts.
For the writers out there, that's what we call foreshadowing. So you and I really got to, I mean, my house was where the parties were.
It was, yes.
But we really got to know each other, where Brent's house was where the parties were, but then Brent graduated and went on to bigger and better things, like producing my podcast. No, in all seriousness, he hosts a very, very good podcast called Hysteria 51. If anybody does not know that podcast, go check it out, Hysteria 51. Okay. You were my dresser in a show called Parade.
Yes.
Now, tell the people at home what a dresser is.
I had to make sure all of your costumes were prepped and ready to go, and there were a couple quick changes. I got to stand in the wings of the stage and help make sure that your costumes were on quickly enough and you were back on stage, ready to do your thing.
Yep. Yeah. And you, we were just discussing before we recorded, at the end, I had a quick change back into a suit after I'd been hanged. Spoiler alert. I mean, it's a historical thing, and you had to prep a tie for me, right?
I do. And I believe I learned how to tie a tie for this exact occasion. So
is that right?
It is. Yes. I don't really remember how to do it anymore, so I can't be tested on this, but I'm pretty sure I remember being 18 and learning how to tie a tie and thinking this is college.
This is why we're all going into debt.
Yes, this is what my parents are paying tuition for.
Right, right. So you mentioned earlier that you changed your major to psychology.
Yes, I added it on as a secondary backup option.
And now that you're a famous stage actress,
yes.
What happened to your psychology degree?
I decided to continue that path, actually, yes. Went and got my master's in clinical psychology as well.
Oh, wow. And so how are you using that today?
So I'm a therapist.
Oh, great. Can we
do just therapy right here, right now?
Yeah, please.
Kind of role
Actually,
reversal
could we do
of
couples therapy with
then.
Brent and I? Brent,
Yeah, I
come
can
over
see
here.
it.
We'll sit
Some
on the love seat.
communication issues,
Yes.
some empathy building. We can
Yes.
do a little
Ooh,
bit here.
empathy building.
Yeah.
How long have you been working as a therapist?
Oh gosh, a while now. About 12 years, I think.
12
going on.
years.
Yeah.
Well, all joking aside, I think that's a fucking noble pursuit, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you see any number of different things? Do you have any specialties or anything like that?
Well, we all say that we work with anxiety and depression because, we want to make sure we get paid and have clients.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the general thing. But then on top of that, my more specific specialties, I really enjoy working with postpartum, any kind of maternal mental health issues. I do couples therapy, but I try to limit it because I like to have, my own mental health in place.
Is that a particularly challenging
Very
avenue? Yeah.
Telling adults to stop yelling at each other is,
Yeah.
can only take so many hours of that in one day.
Don't worry, Brent and I aren't adults, but we will yell. Okay, so you and I, when we spoke before this, and you told me that one of the things that you really feel that you have become even more and more of a specialist, not specializing in, is like postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, that type of thing. And how do you find that you're getting reached out about that every day? Yeah,
I've been trying to, kind of like word of mouth too, referrals. As you see people, you kind of grow and take on more of that space and that niche. It's definitely a high need area. So I do get reached out to about it, at least every week, if not every day sometimes.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And you have a daughter, right?
I do. She is about to turn 7 this summer.
Oh, 7.
I know.
Is her name Kevin? Because when I turned 7, there was a banner that said, "Thank heaven, Kevin is 7." And the next year, my parents got divorced. Oh. That's not funny, Brent. What are you laughing about?
See? Empathy building.
Yes,
we gotta work
empathy
with Brent
building.
here.
I've never seen Brent laugh that hard in my life. Okay. So she's turning 7 this year. Okay. And were you still working? You said you've been working for 12 years as a therapist. So you were working in the community of mental health when you were pregnant.
I was, yes. I remember seeing clients when I was working at the community mental health center, and I was pregnant. And like as you becoming more visibly pregnant, my supervisor at the time started throwing me all the pregnant clients because he was like, "You're pregnant, so naturally you must know what to do with these clients." Even though I was still a fairly new therapist at the time and didn't know.
And also the first time you'd been pregnant, right?
And the first time I'd been pregnant,
You weren't like an expert.
No.
Yeah.
No. Still wouldn't say I'm an expert in that.
Right.
But I actually really enjoyed it and thought that was really fun and started taking on more of them. And then after I had my daughter and went into private practice, and then I kind of started making that more of my niche and one of my favorite. It's not my only population I work with, but it's probably my favorite.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, I've been going to therapy for about 600 to 700 years. And one of the things, I've had the same therapist for the past, 11 and a half years. And one of the things that I always enjoy is every once in a while, she will share something personal from her life that is somewhat like an affirmation of what I'm going through, right? It's the version of, you're not alone in feeling that way. Hey, I struggled with this. And I think one of the reasons that you wanted to come on and talk was about your struggles with postpartum depression, although you said it's more postpartum in your case.
My case, yes, specifically to me, but yes.
Postpartum anxiety, I believe is what you called it?
Yep.
Okay. So I think you, as a therapist, do you believe that therapists need to go through things in order to be to counsel someone? Like to be able to do, so like to have anxiety and depression?
Well, so no, I think I'm actually a really big believer that, we shouldn't have the same problems as our clients. It helps us greatly when we don't. Actually, COVID was a weird time.
Yeah.
We're all like, pretty much all my therapy sessions were like, yeah, this sucks. And it's like, yeah, me too. I hate this.
Yeah.
So that's not the best therapy. But I am a firm believer I don't have to go through it. I haven't gone through most of the things my clients have gone through, but this is one of the random, weird, like specific areas where I find it actually is really nice because it is a nice thing to connect on. It makes, my clients with postpartum feel a little bit more comforted that I tell them, I pretty much always tell people off the bat, like, yeah, I'm a parent and that's, part of who I am. And you should get to know that about me if I'm going to be your therapist. Mm-hmm. And I will throw in little, not like stories, not fully taking on too much time with the stories, but I'll throw in little quips here and there of like, yep, little ways that I can relate and let them know that, one of the big things about postpartum is how isolating it is and that they are not certainly the only people who have gone through these things or thought these thoughts. And yeah, so I don't like to overshare. I try hard not to overshare, and it's so easy to overshare as a therapist. That's the thing. People don't realize I would love to just sit and talk about myself for an hour. Hence, I'm here today.
Have you thought about getting a therapist?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a novel idea.
Yeah, isn't it?
Should consider that. They're all so busy. How do you find one these days?
Yeah, well,
God.
I wonder why.
I know. It's actually true. I feel bad. We are really too busy these days. It is a problem. But yes, I do love sharing little things here and there to connect with my clients.
That's awesome. Okay. So you have your daughter. Mm-hmm. And so take us back to just before you were pregnant. Like you and your husband were planning to have a baby. Was this, yeah? Yeah.
So there was just this one fine day. I remember being like, yeah, okay, I think I want to do it. Let's not overthink this because we'll think our way out of it. So let's just do this now before we lose our nerve. And I will say I am very, very fortunate. We were able to conceive and get pregnant pretty much immediately. The minute I said it, we were like, oh God, okay, are we really prepared? So then that's kind of where the journey started, actually.
So where did you, it must have been at first, as you said, you were kind of implying, and it's true, some people struggle so hard to have babies. And when did you feel that you started to feel something change in your disposition? You got heightened anxiety, things of that nature.
Yeah, kind of immediately. That's the crazy part.
Immediately meaning right after you found out you were pregnant?
Yeah. I found out very early on. I probably found out within like days that I was pregnant because I was aware of it and tracking and taking tests like consistently. So pretty quickly I started noticing this like sudden like whoosh of anxiety that I've never really felt in such an elongated way before. I mean, if I would feel like nervousness or, like things like that, obviously up until that point in my life. But this was a new extended phase of like, oh, okay. I can't let this like thought spiral out of my head. It just won't go away.
Yeah.
That was new.
So you never had like those obsessive racing thoughts prolonged?
Not in that way, not to that extent before, no.
Okay. So I've talked on here a few times, like, I don't have any kids, just I don't think I could handle the emotional stress of it. And was it just like, what are we going to do? How am I going to be a parent?
Yeah, it was all those things. It was all of the things that, you know how they say like no one's ever really ready, and then you just like do it, and then you're supposed to like figure out all the things that made you feel like you weren't ready. Well, here we are now. We have to figure out all the things that we're not ready. And I was like, I have no idea how to do this. I'm no more prepared to figure these things out today than I was, 3 weeks ago before I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And now we're like, how do we figure out money? How do we figure out, we were still living in a 1-bedroom apartment in the city.
What neighborhood?
We were living in North Center at the time.
Oh.
Yes. I miss it. I miss it a lot.
It's a great city.
Yes, it was beautiful. Had my favorite little like bagel place right across the street, and I was like, am I going to have to give all this up?
Yes, the answer was yes.
The answer, unfortunately, was yes.
When you were feeling panicky and feeling that change in your general anxiety feeling, did you feel you could speak to people about that?
Well, it was hard because, you'd want to speak to people about it, but everyone was so excited, and the excitement just takes over. And anyone that, knew about the pregnancy, especially in the very beginning, were just like my parents and like my closest friends, and they're sharing your joy, they're sharing your excitement. So I would mention it, but it wasn't really, I think this is one thing that a lot of moms feel. It's like you don't really get a lot of space to talk about the negative emotions, especially like during early pregnancy. You can talk about like the aches, the pains, the physical discomforts. Everyone's aware of those, but the emotional things, those are the things, people want to see you excited. People want to see you feeling joyous because it does bring up a lot of emotions in other people.
So did you feel you had to mask your anxiety? Especially,
I think so. I don't even think I realized I was doing it because I didn't even realize how, it was kind of one of those like, oh, surely these anxieties will all go away once the baby is here. Surely that only gets easier.
Right. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Surely all these things I'm worried about can't possibly come true.
Okay. So you have the first rush of finding out you're pregnant, and you realize you have a change in your disposition. You're much more anxious than you've ever known yourself to be in a prolonged way. And then at the 20-week ultrasound, you had that's where where you found out the sex of the baby, right?
Yes.
Now, what were you hoping for?
Oh, I wanted a girl.
You wanted a girl.
I wanted a girl. I was all like team girl. I don't know. I wasn't, who am I kidding? I didn't know what I was going to do with a boy. Uh-huh. I mean, it would have been fine, of course. But at the moment, I was being really selfish, and I'm like, no, I want a girl. Let's be real.
Okay. So you find out she's a girl, so you must have been over the moon.
Oh, yeah. We were thrilled. Like, they tell you immediately. We weren't making a big, to-do about it. We were like, yeah, we just want to know. So they told us immediately burst out into tears. The thing about finding out the gender, the reason it's such a big deal is because it's the first piece of information that you have about the baby.
That's well said, yeah.
That's why it's such a big emotional moment. It's because this is the first piece of real information that makes it like a little human and not just this
zygote.
Yeah, exactly. Like sucking the life out of you, which it does.
Yeah.
But so that's why it can be such an emotional thing for people, because until the baby's born, that's kind of the only thing you know about it. But then once you start knowing the gender, you start assigning all these other ideas, hopes, dreams to it as well.
Right. Okay. So you find that out. What else happens?
They decided that this was an appropriate moment to also tell me. They do a lot of testing during that ultrasound. It's like an hour long. I just remember it took forever. And they're looking for lots of different things. And they started by telling me that it was a girl. And I'm just sitting there, like I just said, coming up with all these hopes and dreams and aspirations that I'm going to assign to this baby, whether she wants them or not. And as all of this is going on, then they're starting to tell me that they see something concerning in this ultrasound. And I'm just kind of nodding along. I'm like, sure, whatever. I'm sure this is all standard. And they're like, well, let's, have you do some additional testing. They get a genetic counselor to come in because the things that they're concerned about are chromosomal abnormalities.
Okay.
That can lead to Down syndrome, but also more serious other disorders that could potentially be fatal, and fatal 2 weeks after the baby is born, horrible, awful, terrible things.
How soon after you had your ultrasound did you were they saying this to you?
Oh, an hour, 10 minutes. They I still had jelly all over my body, and they're talking to me about, these scary things. And they're trying to be really, it's clearly very legal and they're just trying to do what they have to do. And they're saying the things they have to say. Yeah. Exactly. Which was fine. And I was kind of whatever about all of it. Cause I was, I'm like, okay, whatever. This is just a thing that everybody has to do. But then I'm just kind of nodding. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. I'll go get the blood test now. No problem. And then the genetic counselor, I'll never forget it, looks at me and just goes, you're taking this really well. And then I never took it well after that again.
Okay. What's a genetic counselor?
A genetic counselor, as far as I know, is a medical professional who specializes in genetical issues, compositions, looks and sees what the genetic possibilities are of These really awful diseases, but I think also other things and eye color and stuff like that. I'm sure they also can help you figure that out if you need to. But they also work on more, preventing serious illnesses and things like that.
Gotcha. So you're told that you're taking this very well, and they do a number of tests. Now do you get the test right away?
Nope.
How long until you got the results?
We had to sit with that for 1 full week, the longest, most painful week of my life. I just remember crying every single day, thinking, because again, I just came up with all of these hopes and dreams for this baby. And now it's do you keep the hopes and dreams, or do you allow them all to be crushed? I don't know.
Yeah. And it's totally outside of your control, right? Completely
outside of your control, because this is something that's either already has happened and we're just kind of trying to figure that out or not.
I think a version of this is, for me, is when I send somebody a text and they don't text back. It's like the same thing, right?
Yeah. Like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I'm just kidding. But like, yes, something that small for me, and I'm like, but something so consequential like this, and you have to wait for a week. For
a whole week. Sitting with it, and also very visibly pregnant at this point too, because 20 weeks is, you're halfway through, you got a big sizable baby bump. So pregnant women get a lot of attention everywhere you go, grocery stores, whatever. Everybody just wants to talk to you about it. And that was the week that I remember not wanting to talk to anyone about it, especially strangers, because I would just burst into tears.
Yeah.
Which I was trying to avoid doing.
God. Okay. So you somehow got through that week. What did the test come back saying?
We are very lucky. And of course, the test came back totally normal, totally everybody, very healthy, no abnormalities, nothing that shouldn't be there. So we were very, very lucky. But the stress of that week never really left me. I feel like that had
traumatic.
Yeah,
right?
It was very traumatic. And it did permanently kind of just change my way that I feel around, just the unknowns, the possibilities, just how lucky we were to have a healthy baby. Whew.
So, and you had said earlier that you really wanted a girl. And then when you found out you had a girl, before you were told, hey, there's a chance for X, Y, and Z. That's my chromosome pun. Brent, please. Thank you. And you had even thought oh, well, maybe this is going to be a big sister to another baby and all these things. Oh, and now, had you always wanted multiple kids?
No, I don't know. I always kind of just wanted one for whatever reason. That's just kind of how I just wanted one girl. I never really thought too far past that. The minute that we found out it was a girl, I remember getting excited and being like, maybe we'll have a ton of kids. And then minutes later, I was like, no, I don't even know if we can get through this one. Yeah. So let's put all that aside.
Okay, yeah. Now, your husband is a scientist?
Yes, he is. He's a chemist.
Hey, that's fucking cool. So you had told me that during that week when you were having a really hard time, he tried to show you, they told you what the odds were of...
They did. I don't exactly remember. They are crazy, crazy odds. They're such crazy odds. It's actually kind of reckless to even talk to pregnant people about them because it's so unlikely, but they have to let you know if you agree to do the testing, then they have to let you know the results is essentially, I think, how it works. But my husband at the time was trying to comfort me because I was kind of inconsolable. And he brought out I just remember he brought out this deck of cards and he was like, try to pull the same card twice. And he's like, that's about as likely as this is.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And I couldn't. We did it several times. And I was terrified. I'm like, but what if I do it? What if this is the time I pull the same card twice?
Oh, man, that would be
that
not
would
good.
Backfire. But
that would have really fucked up that a horrible week.
Yes, but it didn't backfire. I couldn't do it. The odds were against me.
Okay, so you're 21 weeks-ish now, about. You find out that you're very lucky your baby's going to be okay. But you've had this traumatic experience and you're like, maybe I don't want more kids. Maybe I'm going to have our beautiful daughter and then we're going to go on with our life. Another thing I wanted to ask you, and you and I talked about this, after you found out you're pregnant, everything settles in. Were you excited about giving birth?
About as excited as you would be to be told that your body's just going to get hit by a train. It won't kill you, but you'll feel all that impact. Yeah. So about as excited.
Okay, so was that scary?
No, I was terrified. I feel like this is a thing that people don't. Again, another negative aspect of pregnancy that nobody really wants to hear or talk about or laughs off. It's scary. It's just as scary being super pregnant, knowing you're about to give birth, as it is for everyone that's not pregnant, thinking or watching birth scenes in movies or whatnot, being like, yeah, that looks awful. It was terrifying. I tried every day to be like, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Just don't think about it.
Right. Which of course then you thought about.
I know. I kept thinking about it. I'm like, no, stop it.
Yeah,
I can't. Stop thinking about it every day, every single day.
And well, there you were for 40 weeks, every single day, thinking about what it's going to be like to give birth. And then you said something pretty profound to me that I think everybody understands abstractly, but not many people think about it unless they have been parents. So most people, and especially if they're in the throes of it. You said the day before you went into labor. What was that?
Yes. I didn't realize this at the time, but as I've thought about it, reflecting back, the day before you go into labor, truly, because that's the last full day, that's the last day you're going to sleep like a human being. For going on, if you're lucky, 8 months, probably a year, maybe longer. No promises. But you don't really realize that is the last, especially for your first baby. Once you have other ones, I assume at that point that's easier. Or you just have accepted that fate a little better. But I wasn't ready for that. I mean, I knew it was coming. And you don't sleep great when you're pregnant anyway. Everything kind of gets you ready for this insanity that's to come. But you don't have to get out of bed. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do just yet. So that last night of sleep before you go into labor, you don't even realize. And then labor is the single most exhausting experience of your entire life. And there's no rest again after that. It's not you can be like, let me go sleep it off for 12 hours because you're only ever going to sleep in 3-hour increments.
Yeah.
Following that event.
Obviously I've had many friends who've had babies, and I was just rereading a memoir of someone who might be on the show, and he was speaking about his wife's first labor and the length of it. I'm not even talking about the immense pain and the effort, the length without sleep then, minus anything else, blows my mind how that can... I mean, it happens all day, every day. Yeah. It blows my mind.
I know. I kept teasing my husband that he took a couple naps. He went down to the cafeteria. He got himself a nice lunch.
Oh, he had a nice lunch?
He had a nice lunch. He had a nice dinner as well.
Chicken fried steak?
I don't honestly remember what he ate. I don't think he told me because I think he knew I'd kill him. Yeah. But he, all while I'm sitting there, not eating, not sleeping for 36 hours.
Wow. 36 hours. I've never stayed up for 36 hours.
I think I took a couple naps there was an epidural in there. So there was a little bit, but it's not like you're not napping the way you nap or sleep the way you sleep when you're, you know what's about to happen.
We'll call it 36 hours.
We'll call it 36 hours. You know what's coming. It's like, I don't know how those people that climb Mount Everest, how do you sleep? Because, they're up there for days. Mm-hmm. That's what I feel like it reminds me of. Because it's you're in, sleeping when you're also filled with adrenaline is a very weird phenomenon.
When you're doing what we are all programmed in our brains to do, to propagate the species, it's tough to get a cat nap in there.
Right. It's a little tough when you're I'm about to be ripped in two, but let me take this 20-minute nap here.
And so your baby is born?
She's born, yes. And luckily we had a very good, not easy because that's a terrible word, but good birth. No, nothing crazy, nothing unusual, nothing too devastating or traumatic during that. It happened.
And how long were you in the hospital before you went home?
We were there for 3 days, and it's excruciating because they come in all hours of the night. And this is pre-COVID because, like I said, my daughter's almost 7, so it was a bit of a different world back then. You were allowed to have as many visitors as you want, which is an unfortunate thing that luckily has changed since, I believe. But there were just a lot of people coming and visiting and stopping by, and it was just it was an intense time. But at that time, you're also so filled with all of these crazy hormones that are rushing through your body. And it's the oxytocin from the breastfeeding and just the birth and all of this stuff. So it's almost it's a bit of an adrenaline high, but not really. But so it wasn't this overwhelm. It was overwhelming, but it wasn't as anxiety filled. It's just so exhausting and you're in this weird whirlwind. It doesn't really set in until you leave.
Okay. And you have to leave. They got to kick you out.
They tell us, you got to.
You got to go.
It's very
we have more
hotel.
Mothers. Yes, very expensive. You're right. So once you got home, you got this new thing that you have to keep alive. And tell us about what happened then.
We called the hospital, I think 2 hours after 2 or 3 hours after being at home. We're calling already, being I don't know if we're doing this right. Are we breastfeeding long enough? Is she getting enough food? Oh my God, the immense amount of responsibility that you feel and that they just give you this baby. They're just naturally, surely you'll know what to do. You figure it out, but you definitely don't feel like you know what to do. That's the big thing. No one feels, especially not for the first. I can't speak to anything past that, but the first baby, you do not feel like you know what you're doing. You literally feel like you just found this baby in the hallway and you're I'm supposed to do what now?
Right. And I'm sure that you guys probably, I don't know, read What to Expect when you're
Oh, we
expecting,
read all the
that
books.
shit. And that didn't prepare you for shit.
Didn't prepare you for shit. I mean, it's like you when the baby cries, you help it.
Yeah. So let that be a lesson, everyone. Books don't prepare you for
They
shit.
don't prepare you for shit.
Brent nodded vigorously. Okay. Okay. So you call. I guarantee you, I would be calling, texting, posting on the Twitter of the hospital and saying what terrible customer support this is, all that good stuff. So, like, everything must feel as if it's quite literally life or death.
It does. It really does. I think that's one of the hardest aspects of those first few months, but definitely first few weeks. Everything is so urgent. Everything with newborn babies is so immediate. Like you can't, if they're having an issue eating or not taking their bottle or not breastfeeding or whatever, you can't be like, all right, well, we'll go see the doctor in like a few days about this. No. No. This is like, we need to figure this out in the next hour or this situation gets dire real quick.
Right.
So everything feels so incredibly urgent and incredibly intense. It's such an overwhelming feeling, and that definitely contributed to like the immense amount of anxiety by this point that like you started feeling every day, that started sitting in, like really sinking in of how like, whoa, we got to figure this out. We got to figure this out now if there's a problem.
Yeah. God. Again, one of the many reasons I don't have any kids. And I think you called it like a slow-paced action movie, which I love that phrase.
That's what it feels like, because the stakes are so high and the decisions have to be made so fast. But the plot is so boring because nothing is happening. It's, do we go to Target and buy a different kind of nipple for this bottle or not? But it's like the biggest decision you're going to make in that hour, that you have to figure this out, because if she didn't seem to get enough, we were doing a combination of things as well. I was breastfeeding her, but I was also giving her bottles to supplement. She had some eating issues in the beginning. She had a bit of a lip tie and a tongue tie.
What's a lip tie?
It's hard. I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but I think it's like, it's like there's a little bit too much skin or something that holds it together. So it just makes it harder for them to like eat and get like express as much milk as they're trying to express. I think my best understanding. We did eventually get that taken care of. But those first few weeks while we were trying to like struggle through that, it was definitely intense of just trying to constantly, maybe try different things or going and, I think we had a couple different bottles that we were trying out with her. I was still breastfeeding and pumping and pretty much anything and everything to make sure we keep this baby going.
Yeah. And, you said you get pregnant, you feel more anxiety than you ever have in your life. And then I believe you said that once you brought the baby home, it was like twice that anxiety.
Yes, it was definitely a lot more. And a lot of it definitely comes from the sleep deprivation. I'll say that it is clinical sleep deprivation, technically, is what parents go through, at least that first year, where you're sleeping, only a handful of hours at a time if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you're sleeping like 1 hour on, 1 hour off, 1 hour on. And then you kind of like every morning you wake up and you do the math of how many hours do I think I got that night?
Wow.
Like maybe 5. Cool.
And when you're awake, I cope with anxiety by going on a run, or I cope with anxiety by hosting a podcast about it, or, each and everything. But you, not to mention also that you just gave birth, so your body is recovering.
Yes.
But you can't cope really with that strong anxiety, because it's like, well, I have to keep being there for the baby at all times.
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's also what makes postpartum such a unique and difficult experience, whether it be depression, anxiety, whatever. Yeah, there's no real ability to cope because you can't. You can't take time and be like, I'm going to go get my nails done and go somewhere, just have some me time.
A spa day?
Yeah, no, we're not doing that, especially not off the bat. Eventually, as time goes on, of course, those things get easier, and I do recommend that to my clients, and I do encourage that. But those first few months, it's like you're also just like your head isn't in that. That's not what you're thinking about. That's not what you're caring about. You kind of forget. It's like this amnesia of like everything that you did before, everything you were before, and it's like you have this sole purpose of taking care of this child. And I think I always tell my clients it takes, pretty much that first year for that amnesia to subside. And you kind of remember these things of like, oh, that's who I used to be. That's what I used to do. That's right. Like, like going on runs or getting my nails done or whatever. Like those things are all out the window for a good while for there. So there's I always say there's really no real way to cope with the emotions you feel those first few months at least. You just kind of have to ride them out. And then the ways you cope or the things you do for yourself are just so much smaller, like taking a shower or taking a nap or eating. Those are, just basic human needs being met are ways to.
That's called pampering at that point.
Yes, it's called pamper. Yeah, it's really luxurious if you got a meal and took a shower.
Was it like if you take a shower, you're obviously not going to bring the baby in the shower. So was it weird to be away from your baby for the first time?
Yeah, because you can only shower if someone else is there, obviously. So that creates this need for support and everything. I remember the first time I did it was like the weirdest shower of my entire life because you just feel you do feel like you just climbed Mount Everest. Like your body is still so sore. Every muscle you have is sore and weird and nothing is normal. And then your hair is the craziest hair you'll ever have. So nasty. Like just washing my hair took probably the longest I've ever had to do. And then you also want to get out of there because you want to get back to the baby.
Right.
But it was a very strange experience for sure.
Something that, Brent, myself, any other male will never know is that you had to feel like a badass to be able to do that.
Yeah.
To be able to give birth to a human.
That shower, I remember for me personally, I felt that was one of the kind of little rays of sunshine moments and all of this that are kind of a positive memory I have now where I'm I felt so badass. I was like, wow, my body did that. I got through that. It was awful. I don't ever need to do that again, but I did do it. I did get to do that. You do. You feel really empowered and I can do anything except for take care of this baby.
Right.
I can do anything but this.
We as a society, see our sponsor, tend to take for granted the strength and power of women to be able to give birth to a child, let alone everything else that they do. But we're focusing on childbirth right here.
Yeah.
And it happens all day, every day. Look
time.
Around where you are. There's 7 billion people on the planet. And it's just an amazing, amazing thing. So I'm glad that even in retrospect, you were able to look back and be like, yeah, that was pretty awesome.
It was pretty badass. I mean, I will say, you do get to a point where you're you kind of have no choice. That's the only way to cope with it. It's well, there's really no way out here. Yeah. It's either we go through that or,
Right. So
that's it.
You have the baby home, family, I'm sure, is coming by to see it, friends, all that stuff. And it's almost, is it fair to say, tell me if I'm wrong here, is it almost like a rehashing of when you first found out you were pregnant? Everybody's so thrilled and so happy. And so you have to be so thrilled and so happy. But are you thrilled and happy all the time when you're those first couple months?
No. No. Hence the whole postpartum thing, and hence the thing that I think is, just not talked about enough, which is why I'm excited to get to just put it out there and say it, that I felt these things, I thought these thoughts, and I know that I've had countless numbers of clients tell me that they have felt these things and thought these thoughts, and I know that there's millions more women out there who feel these things and don't talk about it. But no, it's really, you put on your happy face and it is such as this crazy waves of emotions that, I think the happy moments you have are real. And it is a joy to see people come by and visit and look at the baby and meet your baby for the first time. And there is something amazing about that. But all the while, for me personally, and this is where for me it became a lot more of an anxiety thing than a depression thing, because I was just my little therapy tidbit here. I always say depression is sadness about the past. Anxiety is fear of the future.
Ooh. Brent, do you have a tattoo gun? Yeah.
So you can experience both all the time because they're kind of targeting different aspects of your life. But for me personally, I feel like it was anxiety because I was terrified of the future. It wasn't, I was just freaking out that as much as I loved having people come by and visit, I was like, oh my God, wait, am I never going to hang out with one of my friends for more than an hour ever again, because that's kind of what happens those first few months. And again, like, it's not like I had the emotional or mental or physical energy even to get through an hour with another person. I mean, even that was excruciatingly exhausting because you are just so, drained of everything, of course. But that's where it becomes anxiety, because it's like this irrational fear that even though I'm so tired and I just want to be left alone always, like, no, I was freaking out constantly in my own mind that, like, oh my God, what if this is it? I just never get to have a social life again. I just get to sit here and like hold a baby, which is lovely. But there was a part of me that remembers that I'm a human and needed more. And that part of me was screaming. And that's what happens for a lot of people. But like, it's not, not the thing that people want to talk about. And there's a lot of shame in that. It's a feeling that passes, which is why I think, working with postpartum is really enjoyable to me, because I know everybody gets better because this feeling goes away and it gets easier over time. But it's really common those first few months to have a lot of regret. People don't want to talk about that, but I definitely experienced it. And, in waves, not like overarching, not nonstop, but you'd get these occasional like waves of, what did I do? My life used to be so luxurious. I could eat and sleep and shower whenever I wanted. And now that's all gone. And like, you're just stuck in this cycle, and it can be isolating and hard and boring and emotional. And you're like, I did this. I chose this. This was me.
And so these are all those things that you're saying were those things that people think but don't really talk about. But when you were feeling them, did you feel shame in thinking those things?
Oh my God, so much shame, so much. You didn't really want to tell anyone that you're feeling that way, because it's like so embarrassing and so like, am I doing it wrong? Is it me? Am I broken? Like, why aren't I, because and I will say I felt happy days. I think I know I've worked with clients who've had less happy days than I did. Like, I know I definitely still, experienced a lot of joy and fun and have so many positive memories of those first few months. But despite all that, it's still so shameful to even have one negative thought about it. We're supposed to only be sunshine and joy, and this is only supposed to be a positive thing. And we can't possibly consider anything else but that.
That's right. That's the nuclear family, the thing that everybody says built civilization, but has only been around for not that long. Okay. So you get through those first couple months. You keep talking about the first couple months. So that was obviously for you.
Yeah, that was
the real trying time. Let's just say the days get better as the days were getting better. You had said that the nights were still...
Oh, yes. After a while, for me personally, this is my thing, was nighttime. I would just get this sense of anxiety, even as you get better during the day and you get like, we got the eating stuff. We figured all that out. We got that down, got the breastfeeding down. We were doing great with all these other things. It was the sleep, because, I just really like sleep. It's just who I am. I've never, when you're like a teenager and you sleep a lot, like everyone tells you like when you grow up, that's going to change. That never changed. Like, I never grew out of that.
You slept a lot as a teenager?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't need a lot of sleep as a teenager. Really? I need a lot now, but I'm like 100.
Really? Like, I remember being a teenager and like Saturdays, I'd be like, I'm going to get up at like 1 p.m.
Well, I guess I would sleep in a little bit, but I went like 20 months in a row without going to sleep before midnight, and now that would be it would kill me immediately.
I still go to sleep after midnight.
Oh no, I'm a morning person for sure. I like getting up at like 5:30.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's the best.
No.
It's the best.
5:30 is the middle of the night. That's what I consider.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. But here's a fun trick.
Okay.
So because my husband and I are both really like sleeping, and we're both night owls. Guess who we also taught to be a night owl and to not be a morning person?
Oh, that's a good call.
Guess who also likes to sleep in on the weekends now?
Smart move. So
the three of us.
There you go. Okay, see? Parenting 101
easier.
Right there.
Yeah, teach your child to sleep how you sleep. Actually, that is a thing I do tell people. Like, you don't have to let them be these little morning, like, early risers.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah, actually, that is like a real thing I talk about a lot. It's like, no, teach them to sleep how you sleep, because why should you torture yourself? Like, I'm not a morning person. I'm just not. And why do I have to be?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't have a career that starts in the,
That's
I don't
true.
have
You
that kind
kind of make
job.
your own hours.
I work my own
assume.
hours.
Yeah.
Nobody does therapy before like 10 a.m. Come on.
Oh, I do. But that's me. Okay, so how long until after you had the baby did you have a night where you and your husband had a night to yourself? Meaning,
oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, like
it is very hard. That's I think part of the hard thing and why I keep saying the first few months is just because it's so relentless. It's just so relentless. Like you think you can get a break and it's like, no. So I'm super, super lucky and very, very fortunate. My family is very supportive and helpful. But for the most part, they wanted to help immediately. And a few months in, we were like, my mom was like, you need sleep. I can tell you need real sleep. It's like, let me have, she wanted my daughter to like stay with her overnight and she would watch her and she would do the nighttime feedings and she's like, you sleep. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I knew this wasn't really, I knew that it was too much of a fantasy, but I still wanted to try anany.
Why was it a fantasy?
Because when you're breastfeeding, you can't really sleep through the night, even if there isn't a baby to feed, because milk comes in. And the best way I can describe it to a man who's likely not going to experience breastfeeding personally.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. It feels like you just really have to pee.
Oh,
like it just feels like you can't sleep through it. Like you can't just ignore it. Like you have. So I would still have to wake up. I remember that night being like, I'm gonna sleep, and then nope, it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like crying because I still had to get up to pump because you can't sleep through that. You can't push past
because your body is just making that milk and making that milk, and then
it's there
when there's enough,
expecting the baby to be there. So I was like, so I still had to wake up like twice. So after that, anytime it was like offered, it was like, well, this is pointless until I'm, done breastfeeding. I didn't really bother trying to.
Wow.
But then at some point that changed. But yeah, that's just the relentless nature of newborns.
That I just so much in those first 2 months, and I think you had told me too. You would rather go through labor again than do those first 2 months again. Obviously, it's a shorter amount of time, but the trauma on the body.
Right. Yeah. Well, I had a friend tell me this once, and it stuck with me. And she told me this before I went into labor. I say this all the time now, too. Labor's just one day. It's one crazy day, but really in the end, it's like one day. You can do anything for one day, but the relentless nature of breastfeeding that happens afterwards, no, that's every day for months on end. And until you get it and you get it right. So I would definitely, and I feel like most moms might trade in doing labor just one more time versus the pains and emotional roller coaster of breastfeeding.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So you've got your daughter.
Yes.
You got your baby. The way that people, I'm sure that you were saying they come up to you in the grocery store and they want to talk to you about being pregnant or did you still live in the city when you were pregnant?
When I was pregnant, we lived in the city. We moved to the suburbs when my daughter was about 8 months old.
Okay. So you're still in the city. So I don't know if you're ever on the train. I'm sure that people are like, oh, you can have my seat, all that stuff, right? The goodness of mankind humankind coming through. But also, I bet when you have a baby, do people start saying, hey, when's the next one?
Oh, my God. Immediately.
How do they say that to you?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just the people I'm surrounded with.
What do they say?
Oh, they say, when are you having another one? You guys should have more. Don't wait. You certainly shouldn't wait. Just hop right on it.
What? But did they give reasons?
I think people are just projecting their own needs, desires, failures. I don't know.
Okay. So it started shortly after you had your daughter.
Very shortly after my daughter. And it was definitely my, extended family members would say things, but also my just random strangers. Random strangers enjoyed just feeling like they could come up to me and make those comments.
And at that, wow. So random strangers?
Yes. And it, especially as my daughter got older, once she was a toddler, I would get a lot of random strangers making comments. I remember I was at a gymnastics class with her once. She must have been 3 years old. And we were just sitting in the bleachers with the other moms watching, and some random woman I don't know at all started asking me about her. And I said, that's my, daughter. She's my own. She asked if I had others. I said, no, she's an only child. And they're like, oh, well, she's just going to be selfish and spoiled. You got to have more. You just got to. And I'm like, oh, Okay, lady, I don't know. Like, how much information am I supposed to disclose here?
She actually said that she's going to be selfish and spoiled?
She absolutely said she's going to be selfish and spoiled. Like, thanks, because certainly no child that has siblings has ever been either of those qualities.
Yeah.
Having siblings immediately removes those personality traits from a human. It's really amazing.
It's true. I mean, you'd think with my sister not being a doctor, I would be selfish and spoiled. But I'm, if anything, Brent. Okay. No, exactly right. I'm still blown away by the fact that people who don't know you, this isn't like your mother or your sister or, your best friend or whomever saying, you should have another one. It'd be great if she had a playmate, whatever it may be. This is somebody at a gymnastics class.
Yes.
Now, did that person have children?
She had a couple, and one of them
I hope so, because if she only had one, that'd be a selfish kid.
I just remember the one kid was like running all over the place, and the teacher had to normally I would never judge a child, but
if they're running, you're like, well, if you're going to do that to me, the natural human instinct.
Right, I'm going to do it right back.
So, and that's why we have wars.
Right. Oh, God.
Well, and other horrible things like speed dating. Okay, so did you guys know, when I say you guys, you two, you and your husband, shortly after your daughter was born, like, okay, you know what, we're gonna have one and that'll be it. Yeah,
I think you're in such survival mode, and for us, I think that survival mode, I think it's still here. I think we're still in it, but maybe when she goes to college. But you're
hopefully she majors in theater.
Oh God, oh boy, we'll have a few big conversations if that were to ever come up.
Yeah,
but you're just in such a mode that it's like it never felt ready for it. It wasn't even really much of a conversation yet because we're always just so in it. Here we are just trying to get through this, that the idea of adding on another just felt like, we're good. We're good. We know how much we can handle and how much we can carry. And this is a lot.
Yeah.
This is taking every bit of me. So this is good.
And I think it's really important to point out, I can't believe I have to say this, but it's really important to point out that it's totally reasonable, normal, and fine for parents to say, I'm fine with just one child. This is what I can handle.
It is, but society doesn't like it.
Wait a minute. Did you know about my sponsors today? How did they know that I was... This is weird. You mean societal norms?
Societal norms, yes. You mean
that, the fact that a happy family is 2.5 kids?
Yeah, that's the secret formula to success in life, and anything but that won't do.
Yeah, that's very right. That's very, very, very correct. But at what point are people still saying to you, you need to have another kid?
They've backed off a touch, only because the people who would still be saying it have heard me for 7 years now being like, no, I'm pretty sure this is it. I'm pretty sure I'm good. Until then, now they're finally, maybe starting to believe me.
Why do you think they didn't believe you at first?
People just don't, because they presume they know better.
Or again, does it go back to societal norm? And look, I give my sister shit on this show all the time, mainly because she's not a doctor, but I know from my experience, this is me, all we did was fight for 20 years of my life. And now we talk like every day. And that's a wonderful thing to have.
Yes.
So I'm not anti-sibling. I'm just anti-my sibling.
Got it.
No, I'm just kidding. But obviously there's good things about siblings. There's wonderful things about siblings. But it's also just as good to have one kid or hold on, everybody, just hold your breath. No kids.
No kids.
Yeah, Brent. Woo!
I did have a client recently tell me, and this really stuck with me too, also another parent of an only, perhaps the whole needing for a sibling came from the whole spare and heir thing. Can't have a heir without the spare. Gotta back up a little bit.
I guess I would assume that we all think we're royalty.
We do, though.
I mean, Brent does, but he's going to leave everything to his dogs, and they're good dogs, good pups. Yeah, we do think we're royalty. We think we're very special, and we're just, as Bill Hicks said, we're a virus with shoes. And Bill Hicks was right about everything. So I think, and one thing that you said to me, speaking of siblings, speaking of mothers, speaking of parenthood, you said something that I found to be quite wise, which is a happy, healthy mom is more important than a sibling.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Yes. I think, if there's anyone who's, feeling the societal pressure to have more kids and might feel natural or easy for you, I think that's a thing to think about. Like, the best thing we can give our kids is happy, healthy parents. We have to be to take care of them and to give them what they need and meet their needs, is we have to meet our own. And if having more children might take that capacity away from you, then I don't know. Not necessarily, it's everyone's going to make their own choices, of course. But, for me and my family, we realized that, our mental health kind of came first. And we felt like, going through what we went through, which was not even a bad experience. I would say it was a pretty normal, fairly uneventful experience. So it's pretty typical that, we just didn't want to take anything and take any risk of, not having that recovery be the same or bouncing back be the same. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really noteworthy to point it out that, in the middle of it, as you said, when you're in it, it just feels like unrelenting, because it is. Mm-hmm. But your experience, and you and your husband's experience, was a normal experience.
Yeah, it really was.
And it's worth saying, like, even though it was a normal experience, even though you both love your daughter more than anything, that doesn't mean you're not going to have these thoughts. And that doesn't mean that millions of people do not suffer the very difficult traumas, or I don't know if that's the right word, the very difficult times after having a baby, keeping the baby alive. And it doesn't mean you don't love the baby.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes. No, we love the baby so much. No, of course here I can talk about this all so easily because my daughter is almost 7.
Yeah.
She's off in camp somewhere doing who knows what, like.
Camp?
I know.
Oh, God, it's not theater camp, is it?
No, well,
okay.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh,
yes,
God.
Oh, no.
God.
It's a performing arts and crafts camp.
All right, now we've got to the real topic of today's episode.
Maybe if you were a theater major, you should just not be allowed to make choices.
I know we're all
for other
shitting
people.
on theater. By the way, theater major is a fine major. It really is.
It's a wonderful thing. I couldn't do my job if I didn't major in theater.
For sure. I couldn't
I don't know
act like I like Brent
life.
if I had majored in theater. So, so she's at camp. Obviously,
doing whatever, it's easier now. So yes,
the reason that parents go through that hell is because they love the child and they want the child to live and survive. Yeah.
And she is the greatest. And all those initial feelings, they go away. Like, she's the greatest part of our lives. She's, there's nothing gives me more joy than being with my child. Nothing is as wonderful as that. But, I think that just goes to show how intense those feelings are and how intense that period of time is, and how, I think a lot of new parents, they take, kind of where I'm at today with having a nearly 7-year-old child and seeing that attachment and that bond and how easy it is to access all these positive emotions, and they expect that to happen immediately. And the big thing is, the truth is that it doesn't always happen immediately, and it takes time, and you gotta it's a relationship like any other. You gotta kind of build it.
That's very, very wise. And again, something that's not, I don't believe, said enough.
It's not, and I know it's not, because I have so many people tell me that they feel this immense shame and guilt, that they are like, why doesn't it look like this? Why doesn't it look like the way it's supposed to look in movies and TV shows and whatever the representation they have in their head? And it's like, because that's just not real. Like, it is a relationship, and we are human beings. And even if it's a relationship with a human I made, it's still a relationship. And I have to go through those hard times and bumps and build that bond. And we, once you get it, and you will, everyone will, if you're there for it and you want it, you will. And then it's very rewarding. Yeah.
And, I usually close by saying, like, hey, what's something that you want to share with everybody that maybe you didn't say? I mean, I feel like you've said a number of really meaningful things about this specific topic, which, before I spoke with you ahead of the show, I obviously knew it existed, but I had a very cursory understanding of it and just didn't really realize a number of the things that you talked about today. And so I appreciate you so much coming on and sharing these stories. Because, look, it takes a lot to just be like, yeah, I had these thoughts at these times, and I had selfish thoughts. And, society says mothers should never be selfish and blah, 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 blah. So with that being said, before we wrap up, or as we're wrapping up, is there anything that you kind of want to say at the end to impart that you may have not already said?
I'm sure I've already said it, but, one of the reasons I love working with postpartum is because it gets better. I tell that to all my therapist friends when they ask about it. I'm like, oh, but it's the best population because it gets easier. A lot of these problems, they naturally, with time, it'll heal those things. And watching people go from, this deep, hard, dark place sometimes to, this true light at the end of the tunnel is incredibly amazing. And if you yourself happen to be anywhere in that dark place, just know that, you will get through it. It happens. And it's super, super normal.
All right. That's wonderful. I do have one last question.
Yes.
When are you going to have another kid?
Oh, for God's sakes.
Okay. Just kidding. Marina, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really, truly appreciate it. I think it's a very valuable story, and it's a story that millions of people deal with every day.
Yes.
And I just think it's kind and generous and brave of you to come on. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Glad to share it.
To everybody else, I even said right before we started recording, I was like, all right, say the email. That's what I was saying in my head. Say the email. I didn't say the email. So I'll say it now. If you would like to be a guest on the show, please email us at sadtimekc, that's K as in ketchup, C as in catsup, sadtimekc@gmail.com, and we can let you know how it works. Also, Brett and I are working on a few things that we're going to build out to get a little more interactive, both on social media and in other ways. So stay tuned for that, for some announcements on that. You can find us on Facebook if you just search Sad Times. Ours is the one with the badass logo, the black and white logo. It's a face with an X and a heart for eyes. And then, oh yes, it's right over here to my left. And then the word happy crossed out with a line for the mouth. So please come over, join the Sad Times group on Facebook. I might even start an Instagram this week if I'm feeling really, really crazy. Did you know about Instagram?
No, I haven't heard of it yet.
Yeah, me either, apparently. But find us on Facebook. Please tell your friends. If you love the show, please give us a review, give us a follow, and I'll end to remind everyone something I try to remind myself every day. There's always room for kindness and grace, no matter what you're going through or what you may be feeling, especially with yourself. I forget it every day. We can always know that there's always room for kindness and grace, and we'll see you next time on Sad Times.
You've been listening to a Fourth Hand Joint.